Yeah. Just checking the audio. Sounds good. Perfect. Here we go. Another live stream. Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Welcome to my regular now Sunday evening in the UK live stream. So welcome everyone. As always, chat amongst yourselves in the live chat. It is largely going to be a Q&A, and I realise there's some really experienced people in the live chat. So if I can't answer your question personally, then I'd like to ask the more experienced folk on the chat to maybe answer your questions. So feel free to use the chat as a community tool. Let us know where you're all from, and let us know one thing that you've enjoyed about lockdown. So I was just having my dinner with my family, and I was just chatting with my wife, and we both really enjoy having a cup of tea first thing in the morning with our dog in bed. And we've done this pretty much every single morning because of lockdown. We've both not get out of bed first thing to rush off to work anywhere. So we've really enjoyed that. So let us know one positive thing that you've enjoyed about lockdown. A few things to talk about before we go into the Q&A, and I want to talk about the book in more detail as well. But before update about my week, a couple of exciting things to tell you about. I think they're exciting anyway. First thing, I want to give a shout out. Hopefully he's watching. His username is fishyaz on Instagram, and he sent me the coolest key rings that I have ever seen. So thank you so much, fishyaz. I don't know if you can see that. He sent me some red colanders attached to a key ring. So really grateful. Thank you so much for, I guess you 3D printed these out. They're really cute, and they have pride of place on my bunch of keys right now. I think he sent me 3 or 4 of them, so maybe I'll do some as a giveaway. But really cute. For those that don't know, the red colander is a very special tool in my maintenance kit. I use it to fill almost every single aquascape that I create, and I use it for water changes, etc. Anyone that's watched many of my videos will have seen the red colander. I've even got a t-shirt with it on, and it is a huge part of my aquascaping life. So to have it on a key ring and carrying it around with me at all times, I think it's a really cool present, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much, fishyaz. That's really, really cool. Next exciting bit of news. I was contacted by an app called Headspace. So some of you may have heard of Headspace. It's a kind of wellness app, health and wellness, with a focus on meditation. And they reached out to me, and long story short, I'm going to be creating a video for their app, which is a real honour. It's a huge app used by millions of people all over the world. So for me, it's a great honour because it gives me an opportunity to reach a whole new audience with aquascaping. So the video will only be a few minutes long, but it's going to more than likely be a step-by-step sort of tutorial, bit of storytelling about my life and why I love aquascaping and why it's therapeutic, etc. So all the things I really am passionate about, I can hopefully get across in this video to Headspace. So maybe consider getting the Headspace app. I think there's a free trial. But yeah, I'm really pumped, really psyched about this one. Really, really excited to hopefully get that out in the near future. I am taking a week off work. I have been working really hard on the book, more on that later, and doing video content for other brands such as Tropica and Awase. And that's the reason why I haven't been uploading so much content on my own channel. I have been doing these regular weekly live streams to hopefully keep you guys engaged. But next week, a week off work, but my plan is to do one high quality video upload on my channel. I want to do a complete update on all my aquariums at home, so you can look forward to that. Film it with my SLR, edit it, B-roll, voiceover, me in front of the camera, like a real kind of big comprehensive video. So I'm really excited to bring that one to you later this week. What else have we got to talk about? This aquarium here, it is getting really near its peak condition now, I would say, and it is the IAPLC deadline a week today. So my intention is to carry on doing the frequent water changes. I'm doing at least one every 3 days at the moment to keep it really crystal clear, promote the best plant growth, fish health, etc. And the aim is to get it in peak condition for next Sunday. I'll do a final photo shoot ready for the IAPLC. For those that don't know, the IAPLC is the International Aquatic Plant Layout Contest, organised by Aqua Design Amano, or ADA, which are a luxury kind of aquascaping brand founded by Takashi Amano. And it is the biggest, the most famous aquascaping contest in the world. It's free to enter. There's usually about 60 countries that enter every year, around 2,000 or 3,000 entrants. And I haven't entered it. I don't think I entered it last year, but I've entered it probably a dozen or so times now. And something for you to consider entering, guys. If you have an aquascape that you want to show off and you want to represent your country, then why not enter? It's free to enter, it's online. Go onto the IAPLC website and you upload your photo. Try to get obviously the best photo that you can, hopefully of an aquascape that's grown in. Make sure you take all the equipment out. Check out my video on how to photograph your own with a smartphone. If that's all you have, you can still get good quality photos with a smartphone. But yeah, consider entering. You know, the more people that enter these contests, the better, I think. I'm not a hugely competitive aquascaper myself, but I do believe that there's something really great about contests. I think they really focus you. They really kind of give you an end goal and a motivation to get the best out of your aquascape. And I think it can help improve your own aquascaping, because by having this kind of goal to aim for, you know, hopefully you're going to be more likely to focus on the aquascape in terms of its composition, plant health, maintenance, and you know, the photography aspect I find really fascinating as well and interesting. And even, you know, there's a crossover between photography and aquascaping as well in terms of composition, light and dark, colours, textures, etc. So yeah, just something to think about. If you've not already considered entering, then maybe something that you should think about. What else have we got to say? Oh, I did order a new book this week from Christel Kasselmann. For those that don't know, Christel is from Germany, world famous aquarium plant expert. She has recently had her aquarium plants book, really comprehensive book on aquatic plants, aquarium plants. I think it's a few hundred pages. I think there's 800 images in there, or 800 plant species. And if you're into planted tanks, if you're into aquarium plants in particular, then I'd recommend you get this book. I'm not on commission. I'm not, you know, been sponsored to say this, but you know, as someone that's passionate about aquarium plants myself, I ordered it. I'm getting a copy sent over to me. I paid for it, full disclaimer. And yeah, just something to think about if you've not heard of it. Aquarium Plants by Christel Kasselmann. It's recently been translated into English and it's now available. Go onto Christel's own website. I think it's Christel-Kasselmann with a K.de, and then that's a website where you've got a link where you can find out how to order it yourself. So something to consider there. Okay, so earlier this morning I did my usual thing now. I'm making this a regular thing of going onto Instagram, posting a story and giving you the opportunity to ask questions for this Q&A session. So I've picked out 5 questions that I'm going to answer now. Apologies to all those that took the time to answer questions on there. Some really great questions as usual, but I've picked 5 that hopefully represent a broad spectrum of experience levels and topics. So hopefully we can cover some good ground, and that will lead us into the Q&A that we'll go into in the live chat later. So we'll go for about an hour or so, and then as we approach the hour, maybe I'll try to bribe you with extra time by hitting the like button. The family had a good joke at me over dinner and said maybe if we can get 500 likes sooner, then we'll just end the stream there. So I thought that was quite funny. So let's have a look at the questions. So first question, no particular order, from Luke Birdsey. Best advice to an aquascaper new to the hobby? I think this is a great question because it gives opportunity to the newcomers out there, of course, the beginners that maybe have just started their journey, and I'd like to give you some top tips at maybe helping you succeed in the longer term. So it's hard to know where to start, but I would start by setting realistic expectations. So you may see these beautiful aquascapes on Instagram, YouTube, the internet, books, magazines, etc. And that is great that you've got some inspiration perhaps, but maybe don't expect to achieve that high level right away. So kind of dial back your expectations perhaps. Stick with easy plants that will grow in easy conditions. Even if you have a relatively high energy setup, just stick with the easy plants. It gives you a lot more wiggle room, a lot more room for error, and you're much more likely to succeed with easy plants. And you can still create beautiful aquascapes with easy plants. All of these plants in here, apart from the hydrocotyle verticillata, are all in, and the Monte Carlo now, are all easy category. So you can still, create something really special just with easy plants. And then you just need to make sure you buy enough plants to start with, make sure those plants are healthy, and then really focus on looking after those plants. The better you look after the plants, the more plants you have, the less chance of algae you get. So algae is probably the number one reason people get fed up with the hobby. They can potentially give up the hobby, and that is the worst case scenario for us. So by starting off with easy plants, by getting enough of them, making sure they're healthy to start with, making sure you maintain their health by looking after them appropriately, then you're going to succeed. So learn how to grow your plants, learn how to maintain your plants, and then maybe you focus after that on the creative side of creating the beautiful aquascape. So first of all, learn how to grow the plants, and then after that, focus on your aquascaping. And yeah, set your expectations realistically. So you just be happy with an algae-free tank with healthy plants, and then gradually, as you do more and more aquascapes, this is another tip, just practice, you'll get better and better. And then over time, depending on how talented you are or skilled, or a little bit about with the equipment as well, you can eventually start creating really, really stunning and beautiful aquascapes. But it is a journey. It's not, the one thing I kind of suggest for beginners is that aquascaping is definitely a journey, and you should learn to enjoy the journey perhaps more than the destination. And that's a kind of a life skill as well, really. Delaying gratification and appreciating the journey, appreciating the challenges, appreciating the problems, learning how to overcome them. Then you become a better aquascaper, and you end up creating a much better result. And you appreciate that result even more the more kind of hard work you've put into it. Hopefully that makes sense. So that was from Luke Birdsby. Thanks so much for that great question, Luke. Next question is Tales from the Man Cave. Due to the lockdown, I ran out of CO2. Would I expect algae problems? That's a really great question, and obviously quite pertinent to the challenges that a lot of us are going through, not being able to buy certain things or get CO2 refills, for instance. Short answer is that you will run into algae problems if your plants have fully adapted to CO2 injection. What can happen is the plants actually change physiologically to adapt to be able to use that extra CO2. If that extra CO2 is suddenly taken away, the plant can go through some real trouble, and a struggling plant basically leads the door open to algae issues. So it is likely that you may trigger an algae bloom. What you can do to mitigate that risk is to cut your lighting down. So you can either cut the photo period down. So let's say you're running 8 hours, cut that down to 6 hours. And then if you have the ability, then also dim that lighting a little bit, maybe by half if possible. What that does, the plants will just kind of slow right down, hopefully adapt to that lower lighting, and then algae will actually have less chance of taking hold. So that would be my advice. Try to get CO2 in there as soon as you can, but if you until you can get the extra CO2 or refill your CO2, then just dial back that lighting if possible. Thanks for the question, Tales from the Man Cave. Glass canvas art, techniques beyond the rule of thirds and golden ratio. So this is a bit more of an advanced question. What we mean by rule of thirds or golden ratio, these are compositional guidelines or rules that help us to position our focal points or dominant plants or any kind of really kind of strong feature in the aquascape. And what we like to do, a lot of us will actually split the aquarium into 3 equal sections, vertically and horizontally, and then where those intersections cross over, and you might have seen this in your smartphone when you open up the camera app, you might see this grid. This is automatically giving you the rule of thirds, and it's used in photography a lot, and that's why it comes up on your camera app. And a really good idea is to deliberately line up your focal point with those crosses where those lines are intersecting. I'm not using the rule of thirds in here, so this is a bad example. It's actually quite symmetrical in terms of the main focal point. This trident fern in the centre, and then we've got the bright red plant, which is just starting to come into effect now. That's quite central, but I have offset it a little bit by using, I'm not using Monte Carlo. So this Monte Carlo here, you could argue is a focal point. That's rule of thirds over to the left. So that's the rule of thirds, that's the golden ratio. The golden ratio is very similar to the rule of thirds. It's exactly the same principle, it's just a slightly different ratio, slightly less than 2/3 across, so don't worry about it, but the principle is exactly the same. More advanced kind of compositional guidelines or tips to help you compose your aquascape. I would consider golden circles. So there's a technique called a rule called the Fibonacci sequence, which is a set of numbers, and these can be plotted as a circle, which is like a spiral, a golden spiral, I think it's called as well. And this actual spiral occurs in nature. It occurs in like snail shells. It occurs. It's a mathematical thing that occurs in lots and lots of things in nature. I think it's something like the ratio of your upper arm to your forearm or your hand to your, something like this is all linked to this special sequence. But what you can do is you can overlay this golden spiral over your aquascape, and then you can deliberately position your focal points in accordance with where these kind of lines cross over again. So something maybe to Google, the Fibonacci sequence or golden circles is probably an easier one to look into. That's a bit more of an advanced technique. Just in terms of general tips for composing your aquascape, one thing I've really kind of learnt in the last few years is the use of depth in aquascaping. And the real kind of pros, the world-class aquascapers that consistently rank high in the aquascaping contests have all nailed this principle of using depth. And when you look into the aquascape, it will appear, much deeper than it really is. Now, the real basic ways that you can help achieve this, the first one is by sloping your substrate really quite steeply. And this will actually give you the optical illusion that the tank is much deeper than it really is. And then there's other real popular techniques like using a path, like a sand pathway that runs from your foreground all the way into the background. That's another really easy tip. And then moving on to kind of more advanced tips, you can deliberately use broader textures of plants at the front of the aquarium, in the foreground. And then as you go back to the background, you use gradually finer and finer textures. And this gives a forced perspective. So the tank will appear much more, much deeper than it really is. So there's a few tips. In the world-class aquascapes, they've really nailed this sense of depth. They've got almost several distinct layers of aquascape to the running from the front to the rear. In this aquascape, let's use this as an example. We've obviously got the very foreground here, which consists of the tenellum and this open foreground here. Then moving back, we've got smaller crypts, so that's kind of layer number 2. Layer number 3, we've got bigger crypts. And then finally, layers 4 and 5, you've got a mixture of the hygrophila and the limbophylla there. So we've got about 4 or 5 different distinct layers going from the front to the back. You know, a beginner may only think of foreground, midground, background, or maybe even only have a foreground and a background. But the more kind of layers you have running from the foreground to the background, generally, the better the sense of depth, and the better impression, and the more kind of complex, coherent, and impactful the aquascape can look. Tommy's here. You haven't been on the camera for ages, have you? What are you after? Come on then. No, you're going to go see Mummy? Come on. Okay, so that's a little bit of techniques going beyond the rule of thirds and golden ratio. Thank you, glass canvas art. Next question, question number 4. May Vincent, is the position of the inlet and outlet on the external filter important? Yes, is the easy answer. Let's use again this aquarium as an example. I have my outlet here, the lily pipe, and the inlet next to it. So outlet, the lily pipe, and the inlet right next to it. And the reason I have them next to each other is, if you imagined, let's just jump up a second. If you imagined the outlet still there, but then I move the inlet over to the front left, what's going to happen is that water flow is going to come straight out of the outlet and then across the front of the glass, which is great, but then a lot of that water is going to go straight into the inlet. And the risk is that the plants at the back are not going to get much circulating water. So the idea of having these right next to each other, it forces the water around in a circular motion. We call it a gyre effect. So that's the reason we have them closer together. Now, I did used to have another external filter on here, and I had almost the opposite configuration. We call it diametrically opposed on the other side of the aquarium. And this really helps to force this diametric gyre effect of creating an all-round circulation. And circulation is a really important topic that maybe a lot of planted aquarium owners don't consider so much. And it's really important when you're using higher energy levels. So if you're injecting CO2, if you've got high levels of lighting, lots of plant growth, then the higher those things are, the more circulation you need. Because what happens is, there'll be areas if you don't have sufficient circulation, so there'll be some dead spots in the aquarium where there's no circulating water. Consequently, those plants won't be getting as much CO2, they won't be getting as much nutrients, they'll suffer. And then what will happen is, because they're suffering and the other plants that are getting more of the circulation, they're getting more of that CO2 and nutrients, they're growing really well. And then it's almost like a vicious circle, because the better these plants are growing, the less well the other plants are growing, because they're always sort of out competing with each other, if you like. So that's why it's really important to get hopefully as a consistent level of circulation around the whole aquarium. And that's one of the reasons I like to use a CO2 inline diffuser, because you can actually see the mist coming out of the outlet there, and you can physically see the mist all over the aquarium. It's a very, very fine mist, so you can't really see it right now in the video. The CO2 is actually on right now. And you can also witness this with an in-tank diffuser. So just position that diffuser somewhere in the aquarium where it's getting the best circulation, and then hopefully you'll see that CO2 mist, those CO2 microbubbles, distributed as evenly as possible around the entire water column. And that's the that's the ideal world, is getting all those CO2 bubbles around as much of that tank in as equal measure as you possibly can. So quite a long answer to that sort of short question, but hopefully it gives you some insights there. Okay, thanks for the question, May Vincent. Question number 5. This is the last one we do before we go into the live Q&A, so get your questions ready, guys. This is a tricky one. I wasn't sure whether I was going to answer this one. Nick Medak, who is my current favourite aquascaper? Now, it's really tricky because I know a lot of aquascapers, a lot of them are dear friends, and there's a potential, they're not going to be upset for people like leaving out people. But my actual favourite aquascaper, and he is a dear friend, he was at my wedding, is Adam Pascala, and just his style I really, really love. He has really got this unique, he's absolutely a nature aquarium specialist, but he has such a unique style. he never copies anyone. He's used Amano as inspiration, of course, like most aquascapers. But his style is so unique and so dominant on using beautiful hardscape, but not in a contrived manner. So I think one of the, for my personal opinion, my personal viewpoint on aquascaping is that there's been a very, very heavy focus on hardscape diorama, or we call georama style aquascapes, where the aquascaper is actually trying to mimic almost shrinking down an entire landscape and put it in their aquarium. For me, that's a little bit too contrived. You know, you see these beautiful kind of forests with immaculately trimmed bonsai trees, etc., underwater, and it just doesn't sit right with me. It just looks a little bit too kind of, like I said, contrived or twee. And it's like when you've got the fish in there, you know, you wouldn't see fish swimming in a forest, so it just looks a little bit odd. So my personal opinion, my personal kind of style and my taste is the more classical nature aquarium style, where you're just using an essence of nature. So you're just kind of using flavors of nature and kind of putting them into the aquarium space rather than directly transforming them, transporting them and shrinking entire kind of landscapes down into an aquascape. So Adam, for me, has really nailed that style down. He uses Frodo stone almost exclusively, which is my favourite stone. It's actually the stone that's in here. And he's just a really great guy as well. He's a great ambassador for the hobby, super inspirational Instagram accounts. And he has the ADA Idea Studio in Poland, which I've been very blessed to visit, I think 3 times now. He features actually his aquascapes and his studio features quite heavily in my new book, which will, I haven't talked about the book yet, have I? So we'll do that towards the end maybe. So yeah, that's another long answer, but Adam is my favourite aquascaper. Maybe he's watching this. If you are, shout out to you, mate. Okay, let's have a look at the live Q&As. Let me just jump on to, I've got it on my big screen. Let's put it onto the small screen and I can see you guys a bit more sociably. Down there we go. Okay, let's just put it on my lap. We don't need any power to it, that's good. Okay. So many questions, don't know where to start. Okay, I'm just going to pick a random one. If anyone's dropped a super chat, mods, if you could just highlight it now for me if I've missed out. If you definitely want your question guaranteed to be answered, drop me a super chat. It just helps to highlight it, so I could definitely answer your question. And obviously it does help me out these days where I can't, you know, I'm self-employed and I can't do the usual stuff that I do outside of the home. So it does help me as well. I appreciate that. Okay, so Adam's Instagram info is just Adam _Pascella. So Pascella is PASCZCELA. It's quite hard because it's a Polish name. It's quite hard to kind of pronounce and spell. Okay, John James, what temperature do you keep your tanks at? I tend to keep mine on the cooler end. We talked about this. I talk about this quite a lot, but all living things are kind of the rate at which they the metabolic rate of all living things is determined by the temperature. So, long story short, the hotter the warmer the water, the more fish want to eat, the more waste they produce, the lower the oxygen levels, and the more risk of algae you get, basically. So I like to okay, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully we're back. Honestly, it's so frustrating. I've had so many live streams. Yeah, anyway, we're back and running. Thank you for staying with me. God, we've lost about 150 people watching. That's a shame. Okay. Daryl Moore, Thank you so much, Daryl, for the super chat, $9.99, just because. Thank you so much. Yeah, we just live the stream froze, but it's working again now. Okay. $9.99. Thank you so much, Noob Dude Scaper. Really appreciate your support. Vivek K. What's my favourite schooling fish and light? My favourite schooling fish right now has to be the Savoir resplendens, which is the Asian rummy nose. You might just be able to make out a couple of the males there. They're very similar. First impression, they're very similar to the regular rummy nose tetras, but they have actually like a blue iridescent main body and then a super bright orange nose and tail. And these become even more pronounced when you have males together and they're kind of sparring for the female's attention. They're great when you keep them with the females. The females are actually much more drab. They're like a grey silver colour, similar body shape. But they're really great when you keep them with the males because it just promotes the sort of natural behaviour of the males even more. So you get this beautiful coloration. So that's my favourite schooling fish at the moment. And my favourite light, you know, I've had really great results with the Twin Star. And you know, they don't support my channel anymore, but they have kindly supplied me lights over the years and I have great results with them. You can see how well they're growing the plants in here. I have got some Chihiros Vivid 2s to try out. I'm going to actually fit these later this week. I might use them to photograph the aquarium for the ILPC final photo shoot because they're really, really bright and really, really colourful, really get the colours saturated. So I might use those for photography purposes. And then my intention is actually to do a video comparing the Chihiros with the Twin Star. I mean, they are more, I think one of those is more powerful than this whole thing. So two of them is just going to be mind-blowing. So it'd be unfair to compare them in terms of the power output. But in terms of the colour, it'll be really interesting to see. And those are more programmable as well. You can program them on your phone. I need to do some research and find out how much they are. I was sent, full disclaimer, these were sent over to me by Chihiros to test out. But it'll be interesting to compare value. You know, they're not as expensive as the solar RGB, but I have heard reports that they're just as good in terms of plant growth and colour. But with that extra controllability, you know, it might actually surpass them. But the jury's out. I'll give a complete, honest and open verdict of them when I get round to it. Joanne Cummings, keep on scaping. Thanks for the super chats, guys. Guys, please use the super chat and ask a question if you like, because you're definitely going to get your question answered. Yeah, hit the like button, guys, if you're enjoying the content. We've got 275 of you watching. And it does help the algorithm. It does help to get the video promoted so more and more people can be exposed to aquascaping, which is absolutely my passion. And I think these chats, these live streams do add value to aquascaping and the plant and aquarium hobby. So if you hit that like button, you know, every little helps. So appreciate it. Said Butcher, how do you know when a scape has reached peak maturity and how long should a scape run before it's too old and risks old tank syndrome? That's a great question and thank you so much for the super chat. How do you know when it's reached peak maturity? That's really down to you. That's down to your own kind of aesthetic sensitivity. There's no kind of rules that you can follow and say, you know, if this looks like this looks like this, then it equals peak maturity. It's very much down to you as an artist and your kind of subjective opinion. And it's something that you'll learn with more experience. You know, I, for instance, know that this is very much near peak maturity because just from a practical point of view, I know I can't trim those stems anymore. If I trim them another time, the new growth's going to really struggle because they've been hacked back so many times now. The crypts are getting to the point where I'm moving sort of 20 or so leaves every week, which is it is sustainable, but not for my own taste. And going back to what I said, it's down to your own taste. This carpet here is so overgrown and intertangled. If I left this much longer, it's just going to become an algae mess. You know, the plants at the bottom are suffocating, so they're near peak maturity. I'm thinning out the Java fern, the trident fern in the centre there every week. I'm removing about 10 leaves every week to keep it into its compact size. And I know that the Monte Carlo here, if I leave that much longer, that's going to get too big, look a bit too dominant. And so everything at the moment is just getting towards that kind of aesthetic point where it all looks really, really great. I could keep it going much longer, but it's just going to take so much more longer to maintain it. So that's how I know that's at peak maturity. And yeah, how long it runs, again, that's down to the individual system. So this has been running in its current state for about 6 months, I'd say. It is a high energy system. It becomes more challenging the higher energy the system is, the longer it becomes more of a challenge to keep it running for a longer period. So if you did run, you can run systems for, I've seen some nature aquariums running for 15 years plus, but they're constantly kind of rescaped on a minor scale. So the hardscape will stay the same, but over the years, the plants will get, swapped over, thinned out, considerably, etc. So it's not a simple it's not a simple answer I can give you, but hopefully that gives you some insights into the information that you needed. Nathan Lindley, thank you so much, Nathan, for the super chat. Would I keep discus with a high tech planted? Yes, I would, and I have done. I had a 240 litre, which was an ADA 120p, and that had 7 Stenker discus in there. I have hard tap water here, so the Stenker discus do really thrive in that harder water. And I had high tech planted. I had Amazon sword, Staragini, Hygrophila araguaia. I can't remember the other plants, but it was highlighting. I had 4 T5s on there, 54 watts each, and I had good circulation, 2 big filters on there, CO2 injection, daily fertilizers. So that was high tech planted, and the discus loved it. In fact, I don't know if you can see, you can see that one there. That is from my high tech planted tank, and you can see the Staragini there, and the Hygrophila araguaia there, and that was one of the Stenker discus. And then I've got another photo up there, you can't see right now, that's going in the book, is a picture of them spawning, laying eggs on the driftwood. So yeah, big fan of discus, and eventually I am going to upgrade this to an Awase Highline 400 and have that as a high-tech discus planted tank. Thank you for the super chat. Oh my gosh, John Starkey, what a legend, has dropped me 1999. There was no comment or anything. John, thank you so much. John, a little story about John. John is a super talented landscape photographer. And funny story, when I first met John, I think it was in 2007, we just formed UCAPS, the UK Aquatic Plant Society. I was one of the co-founders with Graham Edwards and Dan Crawford. And back in the day, it was Matt Holbrook-Hull, who was our webmaster. Shout out to Paolo, who's our current webmaster now. But John, we met each other, I think it was at the Festival of Fish Keeping down at Hayling Island back in 2007. And I remember giving him, I think he had a digital SLR camera, and he knew I was into photography. And I spent a good couple of hours with John going over his camera and kind of giving him some tips on how to use it. And I can't take any credit for it, but now he's a super talented landscape photographer. John, please feel free to put your Instagram account on the chat. Make sure the moderators allow it. So guys, let John put his Instagram on there, please. John has also sent me a print of some sunflowers, landscape print, and sadly my dad passed away a few years ago, and my dad's favourite flowers were sunflowers. And yeah, long story short, John sent me over this beautiful print of the sunflowers. So real special guy. He's also bought me an aquascaping book, which he wrote a lovely note in there as well. So yeah, just a great guy, and really appreciate the generosity, mate. Okay, we're still running. We haven't. The stream's still running. Okay, good. Okay, feel free to ask more questions, guys. I'm just going to talk about the book for a minute, because I realised the title of this video was, the thumbnail was my book. So it has been an exciting week for me. I have spent, it's been about a year in writing the book, but I actually submitted the final manuscripts this week. 45,000 words, 257 photos, 5 step-by-steps, 10 chapters, lots of stuff in the appendix, a full plant species list, top 40 plants, all about lighting, circulation, filtration, CO2, substrates, liquid fertilizers, maintenance, algae, choosing your fish. My kind of everything I know about aquascaping and planted tanks I have dumped into this book in hopefully a nice coherent manner that even beginners can understand, and hopefully it will be attractive to more experienced aquascapers as well. So it has been a journey. It's had its challenges, but I'm really proud of it. It's one of my lifetime greatest achievements, I would say, in terms of having a body of work that I'm really kind of proud to have created. I have to give out, I don't know if Jason's watching, Jason Katzman, he's my editor, tireless guy. We've become really close friends. We've been on Skype every week for the last 6 months, it feels like, discussing edits and taking the book to the next level each time. And it has been epic. You can pre-order it from Amazon. There will be, when nearer the time, I will approach all the retailers that are interested in the UK where they can buy it from a wholesaler. You know, I would prefer people to buy it from their local store, aquatic store, to support them. But of course, a lot of people use Amazon, and it is a great way to get a product out there to the masses very easily. It is produced in America. It's an American publisher. So it is in American English, unfortunately for me, because I'm quite old school with my use of English, I would say. But obviously American English, it reads virtually the same as English, the UK English. But yeah, there's vast majority of the photos no one's ever seen before. A lot of the content you will have heard of, a lot of the methodologies most of you may know already if you've watched most of my videos. But to have it in a book, it's probably going to be 200 or 300 pages, I'm not sure yet. Hardback, 9-inch square, or about 25 centimeters square format, so it opens up in a nice kind of landscape, but as a square it's quite nice. Hardback as well, so nice quality, full kind of high quality pages with full colour photos, all really high resolution, all taken with my SLR camera, all by I think there's only 4 other photographers' work that's gone in there. So yeah, vast majority of my photos. So I'm not going to over publicise it yet. It's still due to be printed. We have some more work to do. The manuscript's been printed. So the manuscript is literally the text, and the photos have been submitted. Now we need to design it. So it's been sent to the designers, and then we'll go through another back and forward process until it's completely how we want it. And then it's going to be printed and published and ready for sale, hopefully 10th of November this year. So I hope you guys can buy it. There will be opportunities to get signed copies. I'll release more details of that nearer the time. But yeah, I'm really excited by it. It's been a real honour and a privilege to be able to produce something like this, to get all my knowledge of the hobby across in a book. There's something really special about a book, having physical pages to open. Yeah, and I can't tell you how excited I am to see it for real. So there, that's enough about the book. Guys, if you're having issues with the chat, just refresh it. It seems to be running fine on my computer at the moment. Yeah, Amateur Aquatics, can't wait for the book release. Yeah, going to be your first ever scaping book. Yeah, I've got quite a few up here now. My favourite, I don't know if you got, I've probably talked about this book loads before, but it's worth talking about. This is the book for me that started it all. I was actually bought this for a Christmas present in 2004, I think, 2003, 2004. And it's changed my life. You know, I literally opened the book up for the first time and I was just like, oh my gosh, that is what I want to do with my aquariums. And, you know, looking at the aquascapes now in here, this is Takashi Amano Nature Aquarium Book 1. It's quite hard to get hold of these days, but look out on eBay, etc. maybe. But this kind of concept of transferring that outside, you know, nature outside into the aquarium was just absolutely mind-blowing for me. And I've always had a fascination with nature. I've always felt connected with nature. I love walks in the woods and forests, along rivers. I love being by the coasts, by the sea. I love landscapes. You know, I love living things. I love animals. I love fish. And you know, to see everything, all those kind of all those things almost incorporated in one thing in an aquarium was just like a light bulb moment for me. And I just thought that makes so much sense. That's for me. That's what I want to do. And that was, you know, that's nearly, yes, sort of 18 years ago now. 17 years, whatever it is. And the journey, yeah, that started the journey, basically. And so all credit to that book. If you can get hold of it, it's really insightful. You know, the aquascapes aren't groundbreaking in terms of today's standards, but they were absolutely groundbreaking back then, and that's what makes it so special. There's loads of cool stories and anecdotes in there about how Takashi Amari discovered CO2 injection by adding soda water. Loads of stories from his childhood. And then if you want something a bit more modern, which is much easier to get hold of, which is arguably a better book in terms of its content, I would recommend this, Origin of Creation, biography. This was written during Amano's last years. He unfortunately, sadly died of cancer, and the book was finished by his daughter. So quite an emotional story. But it's his whole biography, some beautiful aquascapes in there, and again some great anecdotes and stories about his life. A section on the Floresta Submersas, which is the world's biggest nature aquarium as well. So I definitely recommend getting that. So yeah, just a little bit of a ramble on books there. This is my super chat. Sorry guys, can one of the mods, Darren, if you're listening, mate, just drop your question again just below. Oh, John, you did ask a question. Sorry, mate. I'm really apologising for not answering your super chats, guys. John, my super chat was a question about research. What one thing should I research coming back into the hobby after such a long time? Okay, John, good news is that most of the stuff that you learnt back in the day hasn't changed so much. There's just much more options on equipment. You know, lighting is much more advanced lighting now. CO2 kits are much more available. Liquid fertilizers, much more all-in-ones. Is that you're actually kind of spoilt for choice these days? John, contact me privately and then we'll have a one-on-one consultation. It'd be great to catch up with you and I can talk you through exactly what you need in a detailed chat, and it would just be great to catch up with you, you know, as a friend. So, but just in summary, you don't need, you know, just the basics, you know, light, CO2, circulation, maintenance, buying healthy plants, you know, Tropico 1-2 Grow are my favourites. But yeah, most of the other stuff stayed the same, mate. We've got another couple of super chats. So, Super James 85. Okay, let me just answer. Let me answer Darren Blan. How do I deal with dust algae and green spot algae? Okay, dust algae is the algae that builds on glass usually and other plants. Right, real top tip for dust algae, don't touch it. Don't clean it off for 3 weeks. It sounds crazy and it builds up like mad, it looks horrible, but it goes through its complete life cycle. And then when you do clean it after 3 weeks, you won't get it again. That's a top tip. Green spot algae in a decent, healthy aquarium system, planted tank system, is usually caused by low phosphate, so low phosphorus. So add liquid fertilizer with more phosphate in, or if you can get hold of a phosphorus only fertilizer, consider adding that. Thank you for the super chat, mate. Okay, Super James 85. Do I use the filter media which comes with the Awase Biomaster filters, or do I swap it for something else? Thanks for the generosity there, mate. I just use the standard media. All my filters I've ever used, I would say, apart from if I add Sechem Purigen now and again, or carbon, I only use the supplied media. And the reason for that is the plants do the vast majority of the biological filtration. In fact, the plants actually like to use ammonia. So you could argue the more efficient your filter, the less ammonia the plants are going to get. So, you know, it can almost be counterproductive by having really, really super efficient biological media. So for that reason, I just use the stock media, saves money, saves hassle, and I just focus on healthy plant growth, and that more than deals with the fish waste, etc. Thank you for the super chat. Deepak Sahi, thanks for the fireside chats. You're welcome, absolutely my pleasure. Used to have piranha, pacus and arowana. Wow, in 4 tanks a decade back. Your videos rekindled my hobby with nanoscapes and live plants. Pre-ordered your book, Advice on Growing Plants. So thank you for the super chat, mate, and thank you for pre-ordering my book, Advice on Growing Carpeting Plants. I would always start off with easy carpeting plants to start with, just to get your confidence levels up. Just making sure, yeah. So things like Lanthium Tenellum Green, Tropica 1-2 Grow, Marsilea hirsuta, maybe even Eleocharis parvula. So start off by the healthiest plants you can start with, and then really focus on actually planting them well. So split them up into as many portions as you can, and then hopefully use a decent substrate. My favourite is Tropica aquarium soil. Use tweezers. Spend a lot of time preparing the plant. You know, don't rush it. Like I said, split it up into as many portions as you can. Use your tweezers. Use a good soil. Use a good liquid fertiliser. Good circulation. And with the species I've just mentioned, you shouldn't even need CO2 injection, although it will definitely help. So do all those things and you should have good results. And thank you again for the super chat and ordering my book. Really appreciate it. Okay, we've got another $10 super chat from Nick Johnson. Looking to get a quality system such as a Cube Garden 60H, very nice. Need some inspiration. Not an Iwagumi, but something with Frodo stone. If you had a free 60H today, what would you make? And what TDS? Thanks. Well, thank you, Nick. Quite a lot of ground to cover there, but basically the 60H is a very tall aquarium. I think is it 60 tall or 45 centimeters tall? So it's only 2 feet long, so it's as long as this half of this tank, and it's at least as high. So it's actually quite a relatively tall tank. We call that a tall aspect ratio, which is the ratio of the height to the length. So I would actually use driftwood and have it, you know, really kind of accentuate at the height. I did a really nice scape, talking about Adam Pascella again. I did a nice scape for him there, and I think that was either a 45H. Yeah, it was a 45H. In fact, that was a 45 square. But you could use a similar principle of having the driftwood kind of starting off at the bottom left, maybe coming up to the top right. And because it is an open top tank, being ADA 60H, rimless tank, so you can have the wood coming out the top. I think that would look great. You could have emergent plants coming out the top and really make the most of that extra height. Frodo stone I would put around the base of the wood and use smaller pieces so you're not using too much real estate in. The only disadvantage with an ADA 60H is actually quite narrow. It's only 30 centimeters front to back, so you are a little bit limited. This is why I like the Aquascaper range, because they have this bigger footprint. The Aquascaper 600 is similar size, height and length and height, but it's 50 centimeters front to back. But yeah, there's some tips for you, Nick, and thanks for the chat. And what TDS? I just use my tap water. I don't think I've ever tested a TDS. I think it's about 300 or 400, which is on the hard side. But my shrimp are breeding really prolifically. It's fine for keeping Malawi cichlids, but then it's really fine for keeping, I've got tetras, apistogrammas are breeding in here. So yeah, it is on the hard side, but I absolutely find it fine for my setups. Arguably, you could want a lower TDS to get optimum plant growth, but if you stick with easy plants and give the plants what they need, then the TDS doesn't really matter. Okay. You're welcome, guys. Okay, let's go for some other questions. We've got another 5 or so minutes left. We've got 172 likes. Okay, so if we can get 200 likes in the next 2 minutes, then I'll stay on for another 10 minutes or so. I always like doing that. It's really good fun. Okay, I've missed some more super chats, guys. I'm really sorry. I think Temerium. Hello, Temerium. Really active on Instagram. Thank you for your support. Thanks for all you do for the hobby and for my scaping. My pleasure. I really appreciate it. Okay, so New Mexico Aquatics, my friend Little Bobby. I know you use a good amount of ferts. What signs are there for us to look out if we're using too little liquid ferts versus too much? So the good news, you can't really use too much if you've got a healthy system. The plants go through luxury uptake where they can just literally take in those nutrients without any harm. It will just make the plant go more robust and actually have the ability to fight off algae even more. But you can definitely go with too little nutrients and the plant will start to grow pale. You can see algae growth. A struggling plant normally leads to algae. In severe conditions, you can get pinholes. The plant might melt, but one of the first signs is just pale growth. A top tip actually is to use just a small amount of floating plants in your aquarium. Something like salvinia or even frogbit, or if you can control it, even duckweed, because this is the fastest grower in the tank, and the fastest grower always shows up the nutrient deficiencies the quickest. So those floating plants can be used as an indicator plant. As soon as they start to go pale, you know the other plants in the tank, the slower growers, might run into issues in the longer term. So that's a top tip for you. I've got a funny question from Amateur Aquatics, and I wasn't going to answer this because it's a bit unfair, but he's a great guy, Peter. We did an Instagram live a couple of weeks back. Yuri's, Balash, Adam Pasquella, go for a beer with one, get one to scape your own tank at home, and delete one from your life forever. That's my question. Well, they're all good friends, really good friends. They all came to my wedding. So, of course, I can't delete any of them from my life forever because that's really unfair. And I think you're really a horrible person for asking that question. But I will say, go for a beer with one and get one to scape my own tank. Well, I'll tell you what, this is easy. Balash doesn't drink, so I can't go out for beer with him. Adam's my favourite scaper ever, so he'd scape my tank, and then I'd go out for a beer with Yuri's. Although Adam is a great guy to go out with the beer with as well, because we've done it before. So that's my answer to you. Thank you for that really awkward question, Peter. Okay, got 199 likes, guys. One more like and we're going for another 10 minutes. Oh, okay. We've got Miss Super Chat. I do apologise. From James Dyer. Shout out to James, another big supporter of mine. I've seen him in a lot. Tips for starting out aquascaping Instagram. And his Instagram handle is Fish Talk, with talk as in the car. I think I've seen some of his inquiries, so I think he combines cars and aquariums. So check out his Instagram account. Tips for starting out Instagram account, Aquascaping Insta, yeah. Post once a day. Try to make the posts really good quality in terms of the photograph and the content. So try to make the post tell a story. So it could be, it could be of a fish, a shrimp, or oxygen bubble from a plant, but just tell a story with it. Don't just post the photo and then use a couple of hashtags. What's the photo about? Why is it important? Maybe ask a question to engage with the community. So it's a call to action, they call it. So yeah, just be consistent, high quality and engaging. Some top tips for you there. Johan 2004, which fertilizers do I use in here? At the moment I'm using Tropica Specialized Nutrition, and I've experimented recently with diluting it with premium nutrition to get more red out of the Linda filler. So I will do a full video, or part of the video will be talking about mixing those fertilizers together, because it is quite a popular question and it is becoming a bit more kind of popular technique to mix the specialized and the premium together. So you can look forward to a video on that at some point. Yeah, I'd take Adam for a beer. That's a great point, Radu. I have to give a shout out to Radu, by the way, and Lizzie and Candy, all my moderators. But a special shout out to Radu because he, for those that watch the Tropica YouTube channel, I hope most of you do. One of the reasons I'm not creating much content on my own channel is because I'm doing 2 videos a week for those guys. But Radu's actually, the vast majority of the video filming you see, that Radu's actually done that himself in Denmark, and he sends it over to me, and then I do the editing and the voiceover, etc. So a lot of the hard work that you see going into those videos is in part by Radu. So give Radu some love, because especially recently, the quality has been really high, and I don't think Radu had ever touched a digital SLR camera until I met him about a year or so ago, and I gave him some tips, and now he's, I would say, very, very proficient, and he's probably soon going to overtake me on the skill level, so I'm a little bit worried about that. Wow, we've got 217 likes, so we've definitely gone into the 10 minutes. So we'll do another 8 minutes or so. Loads of questions. Okay. Andy Lees, this is a good, it's not a question, but it's a really nice observation. Sitting down watching the stream by my planted tank, this is Andy Lees. On lockdown, I've definitely found that bigger 75% water changes compared to my usual 50% have really improved the health of my scape. Thanks, George. Yeah, massive water changes are a bit of a contentious topic. You know, there's a bit of an old school of thought that suggests, you know, you might get a big pH swing, or the sudden fluctuation in parameters can stress the fish. But I've never experienced any issues. Sometimes I'll do a running water change where actually I've in effect changed more than 100% of the water, because I'm actually siphoning water out as I'm refilling it, doing maintenance while that's happening. And that's been going on for so long that by the time I've finished, all of that old water has been taken out and replenished with fresh water. And the fish love it. You know, they're more active, they exhibit breeding behavior sometimes. There's less algae, the plants grow better, and the advantages far outweigh any disadvantages, in my opinion. So thanks for that. Thanks for that observation, Andy. Okay, we've got another super chat I missed. Nick Medakovic, £5. Thank you, mate. Minimum flow rate for Aquascape glass pipe work. Good question. There's the 12mm and the 16mm. I would suggest you need a filter of at least 800 litres per hour. I would suggest for a minimum. Joanne, got to go. Stay safe and happy scaping tonight, George. Night, Joanne. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. Yep. Poor Emma. Yeah. Oh, okay, James, £2. How do I make the jump from EI dosing to leaner? Just do it gradually. If you're doing full EI with dry chemicals, then maybe switch over to an all-in-one like Tropica Specialized or TNC Complete, or if you're in America, Thrive. There's some others out there. But just do it gradually. Dose every day with the all-in-one. Dose what the recommended amount is. Keep an eye on your plants. If you start to see them struggling, just dose a little bit more. The thing is with plant and aquariums in general, and this covers so many topics actually, so many questions, it's such a complex system. There's so many variables, all kind of interdependent and all varying, so many iterations. It's almost impossible to give you guys a definitive answer to a specific question, because everyone's system's different. You might even set up 2 identical systems, or apparently identical, and there'll be some changes just because of the laws of nature. It's just really, really challenging to give super specific answers. But all I will say, and it's really, really good news, is that if you just start off with easy plants, start off with a lower energy system, learn how to grow the plants, witness the plants, practice growing the plants, practice aquascaping, you'll just become in tuned to this system. You'll get in tune to the plants, and you'll just start to notice things. You'll start to notice your own kind of cause and effects. and this sets you up in the long term to be a successful planted aquarium hobbyist or a plant, or an aquascaper. And it's just really kind of observing your aquariums, just being mindful of any changes that you make, witnessing those changes, and a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, but learning from them, applying the lessons that you've learned, and then just improving all the time. I know that's a bit of a kind of catch-all kind of summary, but they're kind of the biggest lessons that I've learned in the last sort of 10 years or so about aquascaping planted tanks, is just spend the time observing your tanks. I mean, especially now in lockdown, we've got more time than ever to witness our aquariums, unless you're a key worker, in which case thank you so much for your hard work during these challenging times. But the majority of us are still on lockdown or severely restricted travelling, etc. So use that as an opportunity to become more in tune with your aquariums, become in tune with your plants, maintain your tanks more often, and just make mental notes or even physical notes about the changes you're making and the effects they're having. And then just growing in your own hobby, learning all the time, and becoming having a growth mindset. And just there's a phrase that I used in the book, continual improvement is better than delayed perfection. So that just means just keep practicing, making mistakes, and eventually you might get to the near perfect. I'd argue that if there is such a thing as a perfect aquascape. Okay, can you hear me, guys? I've had to go onto 4G now because the Wi-Fi is dead. I spend a lot of money on Wi-Fi. I'm going to phone up my internet provider tomorrow and give them a piece of my mind and let them know that they've upset my audience. Very disappointed. Okay, so the quality might drop off now because I'm on 4G, but hopefully we are okay. So 270 of you watching, 224 likes, 5 dislikes. It's probably my family, using up all the Wi-Fi data. No sound, oh dear. Okay, refresh. Can you hear me, guys? Let me know if you can hear me. Okay, refresh. Can you hear me, guys? Let me know if you can hear me. Yeah, okay. Refresh it if you need issue, if you can't hear me. Okay, another super chat. Thank you so much for Axel. Audio's fine. We have audio. We've got. I was going to say a naughty word there, and it's a children-friendly channel. I do apologise. We have poor video quality. I do apologise for that, but at least you can hear me. Okay, someone keeps asking the same question about TwinStar. Please don't just spam the same question over and over again. It's, in fact, wow, I've never seen George Farmer that upset, stiff upper lip. Give him a piece of your mind. Yeah, you haven't seen me off camera. If you ask my wife and kids, I do have sometimes a little bit of and even Radu has seen me in some emotional, what do we say, challenging times. Dean, I'd love to hear your healthy eating well-being. Okay, it's not a health and well-being channel, but I actually quite like the connection between aquascaping and the therapeutic side of it, the health, healthy lifestyle, and it's actually taught me a lot about that sort of thing. As a family, we eat healthily. We try to buy organic produce if we can. I actually follow a low carb diet. I actually eat quite a lot of healthy fats. Healthy fat has been kind of demonized by the modern food industry. and carbohydrate still forms the majority of people's diet, but I actually perform better with a lower carb, higher fat diet, and actually this induces what we call ketosis. So my body actually burns fat instead of carbohydrates. So that's why I can eat more fat, because it uses it as energy basically. So that's kind of my nutrition in a nutshell. Eat whole foods, eat very few processed foods, very rarely eat fast food. In fact, the kids had KFC the other day, and I actually had a ribeye steak, I think, and salad. So that's kind of nutrition. And then diet-wise, I do take a lot of supplements. I take really high quality vitamins, especially vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D3, because we don't get enough sunlight here in the UK usually. Vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 and vitamin A are really good for bones and muscles. Vitamin A is very good for immunity as well as vitamin C. Coenzyme Q10. I bet the watches are dropping right off now, aren't they? And I've just recently, last few weeks, been using CBD oil, which is the non sort of psychoactive cannabis. So it doesn't get me high, but it has a load of other therapeutic benefits. So I'm getting like 8 hours really, really good sleep a night usually now. Much less inflammation, no back pain. I used to get really bad lower back pain, and just a general kind of feeling of wellness through the CBD. If you want more information on that, let me know, because it's actually really, really a big part of my life now. It's been a game changer in terms of my whole well-being. I don't strictly meditate, but I go running on my own. I go running with my wife, but when I go running on my own, I don't have any digital devices with me. I don't have any earphones in. I don't take a phone or even a watch. I just run, let's say naked, but I just run, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy the forests. So I've got a river nearby, and I just focus on my breathing, focus on my posture, and that's my meditation, is running. I used to be quite a competitive runner. I used to be captain of the running team for my local Royal Air Force station, and I'd be a serious runner. But now I just do it for the meditation and the general kind of health and fitness, rather than being a super competitive runner. And I don't use the gym anymore. I just do push-ups and squats, and soon I'm going to be getting a pull-up bar for outside, and that's the only physical exercise I do. I do anything upwards of 200 push-ups a day, normally in sets of 20 or 30, and then I kind of mix that up with squats. So that's kind of what I do to keep in shape, really. But there's a really good mnemonic called MEDSRX, so MEDSX. So M is meditation, E is exercise, D is diet, R is relationships, which is really important. So I focus on, I don't have a huge circle of close friends, but the close friends I do have are really close, and we, really open, and I have really good relationships. And my number one relationship is with my wife. We're best friends, but we're soulmates, we're lovers, we're everything. We take at least an hour a day just to have full on deep conversation about how our day's gone. We're normally walking the dog together we have local woods by us, and we just talk about each other's day. We're both on lockdown right now. Emma works from home as well, but we have separate parts of the home where we use as our home office, and we deliberately don't tread on each other's toes during the day, but we do have a special time where we connect for at least an hour. We're often just sat in the living room without the TV on, just having a conversation, talking about the latest stuff that's going on with the lockdown and COVID, but also talking about each other's work, future plans, future hopes, etc. So I'm massively digressing. Relationships, so meds are and X is supplementation, which I talked about already with CBD and the various vitamins, etc. Okay, I'm going to say cheerio. Escape hard, stay humble. Yeah. Oh, Wayne Drayton, 10K personal best, 39 minutes. Yeah, so that was when I was super fit. Now it's probably between 45 and 50 minutes. But yeah, I used to be able to run an 18-minute 5K and sub 1:30 half marathon as well. But that was back in the day when I used to be super fit. Yeah, thanks for the moderators, guys. Yuri's is here. Hello, mate. Shout out to Yuri's. He gets a special mention in the book. Okay, I'm definitely going to go now. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I do apologies for the IT issues. Really disappointing. But that's the world we're living in, where I guess so many people are using the internet and basically can't cope with the bandwidth. So that's where we are. Yeah, special shout out to the moderators, special shout out to all the super chats. Really appreciate it. You know, my income has been limited a little bit without being able to work away from home due to the current situation. So those are massively appreciated. And I am so looking forward to producing an epic video for you this week. I am acutely aware that I've not done a full production video for you for a number of weeks. So I'm going to do a full update on all my aquascapes at home. Loads of B-roll, loads of cool music, cinematic, me in front of the camera, voiceover, massive mixture of production style. Hopefully for you guys to enjoy. And yeah, get an update of what's going on, a bit more close up on these aquariums. So I think that thanks everyone. Thank you again for joining. Look after yourselves, look after your tanks, look after each other. Thanks for joining. Apologies to all the questions I couldn't answer. Make sure you stay tuned for next week. Make sure you follow me on Instagram so you have the opportunity to ask these questions, and hopefully I'll pick one of yours out next week. So I'll say cheerio. Enough rambling for now. You take care. Keep on scaping. Cheerio again. Oh, and shout out to Yuri's for the last minute super chat.